I have an issue all the time, um, with people in the media, journalists, just random people online, going out of their way to purposefully misunderstand something or act
Mm.
like they don't understand something or misrepresent something as if they don't get what is actually going on. I'll use an intense example that's actually harmful. For example, about these protests that have been going on college campuses. I hear all the time this sort of like, well, why won't they talk to me? Why, like, what are they even doing here? Like, why won't you explain what you're doing here? Which, first of all, if you're in the media at all and you don't know what they're doing or why, then you're bad at your job and you should stop doing it. It couldn't be more clear. You can look it up. You don't even have to talk to anybody to find out what their goals are.
You could
They're
also
very
read their signs if you didn't feel like reading them automatically like made you an anti-Semite by like visually, you know?
100%. Read what the signs say. They have spokespeople out there. But again, you can just like look it up on your phone while you're there, and all these students are passing you by, and you're like, "Why don't you talk to me?" Look it up on your phone, and then you'll know, and you can leave. But also, I'm sure you saw this Peggy Noonan article where she's trying to talk to a student, and they're like, "I'm not trained to talk to press or whatever," and she says, well, I'm barely trained too. Come talk to me. And then the student is told by other students, don't do it. And she continues, and it's described as, and then she conformed, which is just such a weaselly way to describe like message discipline and continuing the march. And it's such a silly way to write about this when your paragraph is why they won't talk to you. The way
Yeah.
you're describing it, that just now is why they don't want to talk to you.
They relented. So what's really interesting also about all this, like, is the evolution of how protest movements and how student movements have actually learned from past bad media coverage throughout, whether it was Occupy or the Iraq War student protests that I was involved in, or, you know, whatever beyond student protests, is that, you know, and like these old heads, you know, these old activists and BLM, of course, they know we have our media trained people. We defer to them. They are like good at speaking. They know how to speak in good, like bite-sized talking points, because we know what the media does, which is misconstrue our movement and tear us apart and make us look like idiots, like on purpose. And so, and it reminds me of what that woman who says she was stabbed by an Israeli flag, but was not, or a Palestinian flag, but was not. And she was like, and then they surrounded me and wouldn't let me go. And it's like, no. What they did was they identified you as a provocateur, and they non-violently formed a circle around you, allowing you to say what you need to say, wave your flag, whatever. But they deliberately got between you and others, you know, people with like yellow vests on, to protect both you and those other people, because the fucking cops wouldn't do it. But it's so amazing because these are actually really thoughtful tactics. Like, to call like a kid who's like, I'm not trained on this, better talk to someone who is, be like, oh, wow, what an imbecile.
It's so obvious and silly. There are hundreds of people there. It's just basic pattern recognition is why they won't talk to you. And that should be obvious. It probably is. They're just liars. They're just lying. And so that's one thing that like really has been bothering me. And just like, well, why do they even care? I see every day. Why do they even care about this thing going on overseas? They're telling you. They've told you. There are these investments. It's so. I'm not even going to explain it because we all know.
Yeah. Also, have you seen what's going on overseas? It's
exactly.
bad.
Like, right. It's like taking this tiered approach of like, I'm gonna let you know I don't care about what's going on, this horrific thing, and I'm also gonna not understand why you care.
I'm purposefully misunderstand. I mean, I think we rarely see that in news media more than when it comes to like military involvement. And when it's so clear, like, we've got this narrative, there's going to be a plot, there's a good guy, there's a bad guy. Please don't get in our way. End of story. And I know you cover like a lot of like right-wing ghouls, and you've covered, sadly, I'm sure, you know far too much about Elon Musk, but it is also interesting the way that, like, when they cover tech, you know, media's like, okay, well, it's innovation, you know, and these geniuses, and like, don't billionaires deserve it because they're smart? Like, that's going to be the narrative, because to admit the reality of just massive wealth transfer and, like, you know, stolen innovation valor, I don't know what that is, but,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know,
And then like 2 years later or 3 years later, whatever, as the truth sort of becomes more and more clear and harder to avoid, you can forget what we did, forget what we said before about him or about this protest or about the war, whatever it is. You'll forget about it, we'll forget about it, and we'll get away with doing the exact same thing the next time or in the next realm or whatever.
Well, let me ask you, as someone who does alternative deep dive media and has, you know, a really incredible, you know, fan base, and now your video's auto playing in my ear, but, like, you know,
Sorry about that.
no worry. Got to get that trailer in. No, but, like, I do feel, you know, not scared, but very much, one thing I've been saying is, like, an entire generation, if not multiple generations, if they already weren't cord cutting, and already didn't think CNN and MSNBC and whomever else was irrelevant, they sure as shit do now, and are turning elsewhere for their news. And they're going to not forget, just like my generation never forgot how the Iraq War was treated. And eventually, you know, things started coming around. And during, you know, the Trump years, everyone was like, oh, we're all alternative media. Like, we're, you know, we speak truth to that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
shut up, you know?
Democracy dies in darkness.
Yeah. But I guess I'm just wondering, like, I mean, I guess it's good for, like, our brands, but I'm wondering how you feel more broadly about, like, that media landscape.
I mean, it's horrific. But it's tough because, you know, it's good to get your information from a wide variety of sources, do your own research, but there are people at all publications who do good work and who are
Yes.
out there like doing the job. And I feel like so many people, they get drowned out by all the garbage that's sort of stacked on top, and like the, you know, the Brett Stevens of the world, whatever it is, they get the loudest
Yeah.
and they're the focus of it. But you know, a lot of our like reporting, our joke show, I don't know how to describe it, but a lot of what we do is based off like, yeah, we have these reports of this, here's this reporter said this, but
Yeah.
also those reports often have like US officials say, like, well, who are you talking about?
Right.
So there's all this series of filters that it has to go through.
Right.
Which again is not to dismiss like people who are on the ground and doing this work and trying, but I wouldn't describe complaining about a protester not talking to you as on the ground.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I mean, is, like, there actually are, like, you see it today. There are journalists doing real work. Some, they're fewer and fewer, but they still exist. Today is a perfect example. The Pulitzer Prize, the New York Times was nominated for their coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, as they say it, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me on one hand, right? Because you're like, this is the same publication that still hasn't rescinded their, you know, screams without words, mass rape allegations that turned out to be not true. But, and I know people who do work at the Times who are actually, you know, Arab and Muslim, and who are like doing good work, specifically some of the photojournalism essays, some of the like incredible footage that we're seeing out of Gaza, that the limited stuff. So it's like two things can be true, but they are screwing themselves when they are dishonest, when they're not consistent, you know?
Yeah, and being able to, like, obviously media literacy is important, but sort of being able to also, if you see something that's like being dishonest or is just a stenographer for the police or whatever it is, being able to explain why very clearly. This is a very innocuous example of sort of what we're talking about. I'm sure you saw the shrimp and grits clip of Vice President Kamala Harris. Did you see that?
No, I don't. What?
As it's
Fuck.
described is she is asked as she's leaving a restaurant, let me pull up the exact quote. Madam Vice President, Hamas says it accepted a ceasefire deal. Your reaction, question mark. Harris, shrimp and grits. And she's holding up her food that she got, and she says shrimp and grits. So obviously the reaction is, so you heard this question about the ceasefire and your reaction is to say shrimp and grits and walk away. Now that sounds bad.
This is just Veep. How is this not an
It is
episode
just
of
Veep,
fucking
and what really happened is also Veep. But what really happened is that she was leaving a restaurant and found a reporter who had asked her when she went into the restaurant what she was going to get.
Right.
As soon as she walked out, she pointed to the reporter and said, shrimp and grits, shrimp and grits. You were asking. She walks into the car as somebody else is saying, what are your thoughts about the ceasefire? Door closes, and that's that. Now that's not great, and clearly she's like trying to avoid answering questions, and she's doing this sort of like, we're having fun, right? All right, gotta go. But it didn't literally happen as a response to the question,
Right.
and stuff like that is what really bothers me. Where it's like you don't have to reframe this to make it look worse. It's not good. Even like you brought up Elon Musk yesterday. He started following Kendrick Lamar and Drake. A lot of people are sharing that he followed Drake, and the
shark officially jumped when Elon gets on the beef.
Absurd, exactly. Right, exactly. So like other people are like, oh look, they called him Drake a pedophile, and Elon was like, I'll follow Drake. That's got the joke. But he also followed Kendrick. So the actual thing that's going on is Elon Musk is like a sad loser who wants to like be in. I want to, everything's happening on X. We're all talking about this beef. Like, yeah, you're talking about it. So he jumped on. It's like, I got to follow both of them so I can highlight that everything happens on X.
Sure.
And that's a really like not a problem. It's just funny, but it's
internet.
That
is classic internet polarization, and I say that in the least like again snobby NPR way possible. But that is just kind of what it like. People are quick to
totally. And it was
that
funny.
fits,
that's the thing. Like
if
it's funny,
fits.
it works. That's like the bottom of the list of this thing that I was talking about.
I'm glad we fixed the media in 5-10 minutes.
You're welcome, folks.
That's why you tune in. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.